happens when home, which should be a refuge, becomes an emotional battlefield. Love is not enough. This phrase echoes in my mind as I reflect on my recent decision to move in with my girlfriend. I'm a 40-year-old man who, after more than a year of dating, thought that taking this step would mark the beginning of a new chapter. But just 4 weeks into living together, I find myself questioning whether I made a monumental mistake. Let me introduce myself. I am a passionate and dedicated person who has always valued meaningful relationships. My girlfriend is an incredibly talented and strong woman, but she also carries her own insecurities and fears. At first, our relationship seemed perfect. We shared laughter, dreams, and plans for the future. However, since moving into her house, everything has changed. I clearly remember the day we decided it was time to live together. We were sitting in her living room surrounded by our belongings, discussing what our shared life would look like. Both of us were excited about the idea of building a home together. However, what began as a promise of happiness soon transformed into an endless series of arguments. There's nothing more painful than a relationship that turns into a war, I thought, as tensions began to rise after my move. From day one in her home, I noticed a shift in her behavior. What had once been open and honest communication morphed into constant criticism. I tried to do everything possible to help. I cooked several times a week, took out the trash, and made sure our dogs were well cared for. Despite my efforts, every little mistake became a major issue. A clear example was the night I loaded the dishwasher incorrectly. To me, it was just another household task. However, she called me thoughtless and lazy. Sometimes what seems trivial can be the most significant, I told myself as I processed her reaction. How could something so small escalate into such an intense argument? From that moment on, I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells. As days passed, fights became more frequent and intense. Every time I came home from work, a wave of anxiety washed over me. The house that should have been my refuge felt like an emotional battlefield. The shouting and accusations seemed to resonate in every corner. One particularly difficult night was when I returned home after a long day. I was exhausted and just wanted to relax. But as soon as I walked through the door, she greeted me with a cold and distant look. Within minutes, we were arguing about something as trivial as who should wash the dishes. Words are powerful. They can build or destroy, I reflected while trying to explain that I was doing my best to help her keep the house clean, but my words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The constant tension began to take its toll on my mental health. As someone with bipolar disorder, I've always been aware of how emotions can affect my state of mind. The feeling of being under constant attack made me feel vulnerable and insecure. The mind is a complicated place. It can be our worst enemy, I thought, while grappling with the emotional turmoil that had become my constant companion. Every time she said something hurtful or dismissive, it felt like my world crumbled just a little more. I found myself questioning not only our relationship but also my own worth as a person. Over time, I started to feel trapped between two worlds, the love I had for her and the pain her words inflicted on me. Emotional anguish became an ever-present companion. Every time I left work to return home, the knot in my stomach tightened further. Finally, there came a moment when I could no longer bear it and decided to talk to her about how I was feeling. Gathering my courage, I said to her, "I feel like you're trying to push me away." Her eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't expected that response. It was then that she admitted something devastating. "Since you moved in here, I've been trying to push you away." Her words resonated deeply within me. It felt like someone had turned on a bright light amidst all the darkness. Fear can be a silent thief. It steals our happiness without warning, I thought, as she explained her behavior. She told me that she was afraid of being hurt again. She'd gone through difficult relationships before and didn't want to suffer once more. She hinted that if she irritated me enough, perhaps I'd leave on my own accord. In that critical moment, I reflected on what I truly wanted from this relationship. I realized that I couldn't continue living like this. I couldn't allow her fears to dictate my happiness or emotional well-being. Sometimes you have to let go of what you love to find what you truly need, I told myself as I weighed my options. Was it possible to repair this relationship, or was it better to walk away? Despite the love I felt for her, deep down I knew that staying trapped in this toxic cycle where my feelings were constantly invalidated was not sustainable. Being bipolar complicated things even further. I needed emotional stability and mutual support to thrive in a healthy relationship. Now I'm faced with a dilemma. Should I try to repair this relationship or is it better to move on? If I choose to leave, I'm okay with being single for the rest of my life. I've started seriously considering whether I'm really cut out for having a partner. True courage is not the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear, I reflected while contemplating my choices. The question lingers. Can someone change their destructive patterns? Is it possible to rebuild trust after so many wounds? As I ponder these difficult questions, I'm aware that prioritizing my mental health and emotional well-being must come first. At the end of the day, all I want is peace and happiness, whether that's within this relationship or outside of it.